So, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the psychology of why you have a difficult time bringing the range onto the golf course, and some common mental reasons why you possibly hit it better on the range versus the golf course, and maybe vice versa. So the first thing is, we're going to get it out of the way, is obviously hitting off the range mat versus hitting off the grass. If you have access to hitting off the grass, which I know not everyone does, that's going to tell you a lot more of your flaws than hitting off a mat, unless you're really paying attention on the golf mat, which is fine. I didn't have access to a grass range for a very long time, and I hit off mats while I was learning for my first 2 years of golf. And now I have a grass range at my club. It's a little bit easier to practice and figure out what's going wrong, but I'll still practice on the mat every now and then because sometimes it's a little bit easier and a little bit more forgiving, which sometimes you want. But the reason why the mat is more forgiving is because if you are a chronic chunker of the ball, it probably feels better on the mat because it's harder to chunk it on the mat unless you're really paying attention to what the golf swing feels like, where you're hitting it, if you're hitting it before the ball or not, and then obviously what the ball flight is doing. When you're hitting off the grass, if you're chunking it, it's a lot easier to see that the ball did not go where I want it, it's not flying the way I want it, and you see the results typically more similar to out there on the course, because a lot more things can go wrong with hitting in the grass. So if you have access to hitting it in the grass, even if it's more of a, like a backyard type of grass, try hitting it on the grass. You'll figure out, all right, what am I doing wrong a lot easier? And am I making clean contact with the ball? And that's usually probably a big reason why people feel more confident hitting it at the range than on the course. Simply because it's a lot more forgiving to hit it off the mat. But if you don't have access to any grass, then at least try to put down just a roll of masking tape, an inch or two behind the ball, because then you can see how badly you're chunking it or not, or just really pay attention to how the ball flight is coming out and how does it feel. If you really pay attention on a mat, you can tell if you are chunking it or not. But if you're not really paying attention and you're just swinging after swinging after swing, then it's going to be hard to tell what the swing actually feels like. So that's one reason why. Which also leads into my next reason of, it's very easy to get into a rhythm on the range than it is on the golf course. So on the golf course, you're hitting, let's just say 100 shots for the average person, right? Maybe 70 shots, maybe 80 shots, maybe 110, maybe 120. Doesn't really matter. But on the range, you can hit, a large bucket probably has like 100 balls in it, but you can hit the same club multiple times back to back to back. So if I'm hitting an 8-iron over and over and over, my first shot may be bad. I can easily dismiss that and figure out, well, what am I doing differently during my swing? So by swing 3, I am hitting it flush and I feel very confident in it. The first 2 shots were really bad. In my mind, I'm dismissing them a lot easier. But if I do that on the course, well, my first 2 8-iron shots, well, now I'm losing a whole bunch of strokes because, there's more consequences out there for bad strikes. So if I had a way to warm up, obviously on the course with each hole, with each shot, get into a rhythm, then it's going to be a lot easier on the course to do that. But I can't do that because you only have, one shot to make it count, if that makes sense. So getting into a rhythm on the range is a lot easier. So to combat that, one little game or activity that I like to do is I will pull out my phone and use a little RNG Calculator, on Google, and I will type in numbers between 50 and 300. And by doing that, let's see if I can pull it up. By doing that, it will give me a whole range of numbers that I should try to hit. Someone's calling me. So I just put in between 20 and 300. I got 168. So I got 168. So now I know, all right, I want to hit a number 168. What is that? That's my 8-iron. I would go on my club, go in my bag, pull out the 8-iron, hit one shot and try to make it really count. And then I would do it again. I got 150. So then I would hit a 9-iron and see, all right, can I hit this 150 mark? And if you don't know how far the distances are, if you don't have, a launch monitor or something, just use a rangefinder. Ping where your ball lands, try to keep a good eye on it. Ping where it lands, see how far it is, or ping how far you want it to go. If I wanted 168, I'm gonna try to find a 168 target out there and try to hit to that target. And then I'll see how close I get to it. But by doing that, you switch into a different routine and don't really get into a rhythm of hitting the same shot over and over and over unless you really are working on one thing. So then each shot really counts on the range versus I can hit 10 8-irons in a row. 7 of them were good, 3 of them were bad, but I don't really acknowledge the bad ones. And that's why it translates poorly into the course, because I don't feel like there's enough pressure on each shot on the range. Which also leads to another point, adding a little bit more pressure into your routine. So a lot of people will get on the range, and I've been like this, so this is how I know. But I can easily get on the range and just stand up and hit golf shots. The result doesn't really matter. Walking up, I'm just hitting it. I'm not looking at how far it goes. I'm not literally picking a target. I'm not seeing the dispersion of it. I'm just walking up and hitting balls. And that's fine if you really want to get into it. So if you're getting into golf and you're just learning the golf swing, go out there, hit a bunch of balls, try to hit the same shot over and over and over so you get a better swing, a better feeling for what to do when you need to do it. However, if you're looking to translate the range onto the golf course, you want to add a little bit more pressure onto each shot because there's a lot more pressure on the golf course than there is on the range. Wow, that was terrible. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot more people, like I said, they'll feel relaxed on the range because each shot does not matter. But when I get over a tee shot or I get an approach shot after hitting a good drive, I'm psyching myself out a lot. I'm adding a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety on myself. And then I start to fumble on the actual shot when it counts. So what I want to do is I want to get into a routine where I'm adding a little bit more stress into my range session. So there's a few ways that you can do that. One, like I said, pull out the RNG and try to pick a number between, whatever your driving distance is and a short wedge is, and then just hit those numbers. Really try to see if I can hit those numbers pretty spot on each time. How many times in a row can I do that? Bryson talked about that too, is really finding repeatability and trying to hit the same number over and over and over. So give yourself, all right, I'm gonna try to hit the same shot 10 times in a row, right? Spot on, do the same thing, the same shape. If I'm gonna hit a fade 10 times in a row, can I do that? That was chunky. Can I do that? Once I get to, say, 5 shots, right? I want to actually acknowledge that I'm 5 shots in. And the reason why you want to do that is because a lot of people will start looking at their score, which I talked about in a previous video, you should not do. But a lot of people end up looking at the score or they're thinking about the bogey that they just got. So by telling yourself, all right, I have 5 more shots to go, I need to make these count, you're gonna add a lot more pressure onto your range session, which then, once you actually are on the course, it'll feel a lot easier once you're actually under pressure because you've trained your body to function under pressure as opposed to, I'm just gonna get up here and whack balls and it doesn't really matter. Woo. One drill is hit the same number over and over and over. See what kind of high score you can get. 2 is hit different numbers each time. Also, see how high of a high score you can get, or try to tell yourself, I'm gonna do it 10 times in a row and I won't stop until I do that. Or 5 times or 3 times, whatever it is. So if I wanna hit the same number with the RNG, I'm gonna hit that number 3 times in a row. And then after that, I'll do it 5 times in a row, and then 7 times, and then 10 times. If I wanna hit a fade, I'm gonna try to hit a fade 7 times in a row. If I don't hit it 7 times in a row, then I'll start over. But by doing that, like I said, you add a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety, and it translates that skill onto the actual course. Man, my swing is garbage. If you have other methods that you use into your driving range sessions, let me know in the comments as well. I'm always looking for new things, new ways to kind of spice up the range session. I personally like those 2 methods of either hitting the same shot over and over and over if I'm working on something in my swing, or if I'm just getting out here and getting loose and really trying to work on different clubs, then I'm gonna do the RNG and just hit different shots each time. One, it also helps you slow down and break free of that rhythm like I spoke about earlier, but it also just kind of mixes things up and keeps me on my toes, which is nice. The other thing that you should absolutely be doing each time is creating a fairway on the driving range and creating a landing spot on the driving range. So this driving range has little flags and you know, fake greens that you can target. They only have like 4 or 5 of them. But in my mind, I'm envisioning, all right, the fairway, I'm gonna create it pretty narrow as opposed to pretty wide, depending on your skill level. Don't make it too narrow. But I like to add a little bit more stress. So my fairway in my mind is gonna be in between those 2 flags. So I'm going to envision myself hitting a tee shot, either with a driver or with an iron, and I wanna land it in between those 2 flags. I wanna see how many times I can do that. Or if I'm hitting, in my mind, an approach shot, I wanna see how many times I can get it on or near the green in my mind. And that size can be as big as you want or as small as you want, depending on your skill level. Don't make it too hard for yourself. But I like to start wide, hit it into that circle, and then I will decrease the size in my mind each time. Oh, look at that dead straight shot. But I will do that over and over and over. If my long irons were not working off the tee my last round, well, then I would come out here, I would envision a fairway, and I would try to hit my long irons onto that fairway. If my approach game was not working out, well, then I would really try to focus on hitting it to that specific spot in that fake green, or a real green if your range has it. If my chipping was really bad, well, then I would obviously focus on my chipping. But even with the chipping, you really want to focus on landing it in one spot, because if you get on the range, like I see a lot of people do, because I live at the range, you get on the range, I see a lot of people just walk up, they're just hitting balls. It's going left, it's going right, up, down, going so many different places. I don't know if that's their intention, but you really want to try to narrow down the dispersion of where you're aiming, because then that's going to obviously translate onto the course a little bit easier. And that's the drill that I like. If you have other drills, like I said, comment below. Let's see if I can hit a draw. Yes, I can. That's still a good example. All right, so I played a draw, I hit a draw. Does that count? Well, no, because my landing zone was right ahead of me and I pulled it all the way to the left. Now, if I had a really big circle in my mind of, all right, bunkers are fine, just try to get it up there, I hit the number, but I didn't hit the area where I wanted to land. So I'll give myself maybe half a point for that, and I'll move on. All right, now I'll try to hit the actual landing point and see if I can hit that landing point this time. I did the same thing. So the biggest problems that I see from people, and these are also mistakes that I've made, is one, not adding enough stress and pressure onto your range session, unless you want it to obviously just be a meditative experience, which if you do, that's fine. I do it all the time. But if you want to really practice so you can bring it onto the course, which I'm guessing you do, but then you want to add a little bit more pressure onto your range session, as opposed to having an endlessly wide fairway in front of you with, you know, no hazards in the way. So hopefully that video helped. I know it's a little different from my usual ones. Not really that different. Still the psychology behind it. And yeah, you know what to do. Like and subscribe.